Good morning. Welcome to our webinar about what to know about class registration and tuition and fees. So my name is Katie and I work for the International Center as a program coordinator. I'll let my colleague introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Cheryl Friesenheim. I'm the Director of Financial Services in charge of the Bursar Office, where we are the ones that are charging tuition fees.
Here are our names again. So just a little bit about the webinar. If for some reason you have any issues connecting or connectivity, we recommend that you exit the room and then restart Blackboard Collaborate, which is the system. And then, if you still have trouble, maybe try a different web browser. We've noticed that Firefox and Google Chrome seem to work the best. We are also recording this session, so maybe if you can't stay the whole time or a friend of yours would like to see it, it will be posted on our website. It does take us about 2 weeks to get that loaded, so please be patient. Also, you can see and hear us. We cannot see or hear you. However, I will turn on the chat function later, and then that way you can type in the chat box to ask questions. So you can see by our agenda, Cheryl and I will conduct the presentation first, and then we will leave the Q&A on so you can ask us questions. And then we'll have a closing, and we'll also have the chat feature enabled for that portion so you can leave comments, feedback, anything you'd like to say. All right, let's get started. First, I'd like to talk about class registration. I know that's the reason why you're coming to the university. This is a big question we get from students. So you can register for classes once all of your holds are removed. Holds prevent you from registering for classes, getting some documents, other things like that. If you log into your Galaxy, you can click on the Orion Student Center. This is going to have a lot of your student information. There's going to be a link for holds, so you can click on that, and that's how you can view all the existing holds on your account. So if you click on each individual hold, you'll see which department is in charge of the hold, what you need to submit, and who you can contact. Keep in mind, only the department that put the hold on your account is the department that can remove the hold. So common holds international students see are the International Student Orientation hold, a cannot register online hold. It just means you need to meet with your academic advisor when you get to campus. Sometimes you'll have a missing documents hold, and that means you need to submit documents to the admissions office. I mentioned already that new students need to meet with their academic advisor before registering for classes, and they'll talk about deadlines with you, any requirements you have for your major and classes, and they'll help you select and register for your classes in the first semester. You may also have an academic orientation, so a department orientation. Some departments such as JSOM host these, and that's when you will meet with your academic advisor. If you don't know if you have a department orientation, that's fine. You can contact the academic department and they can inform you about that. I've put a website here, utdallas.edu/advisors, so you can find your academic department and your degree through this website, and it will connect you with your department's webpage and all the contact information. That's how you can find your academic advisor and ask any questions you might have. So what can you do right now? Because you can't register for classes yet, but you can take a look at what you'll need to do when that time comes. So you can look at the different registration procedures, and that's on the Registrar's Office website. I've included that here. It's also on, you can also look at the academic program website. So if you look at utdallas.edu/academics, this will be similar to your advising website. You'll find the degree plan, so what classes you're expected to take, any scholarship information, what are the career options in your field, and also faculty information, so you can get to know who will be teaching your classes. Something else that's very helpful is course book. This is something students love. And so I've included the website. This will give you information about specific classes. You can see the syllabi for those classes, what textbooks are required, information about your instructors, so you can find their CV or resume. You can also find feedback from past classes. You can see what reviews the students gave those professors in that class. Something that's very helpful is that you can search for classes by name, term, section to see that information. So you can see by the picture all the things that it includes. One of the things that students should take a look at is the fill level of the class. So you can see how many spaces are available in that class, and so you can kind of make a tentative schedule for yourself and have some backup courses in case those classes get full before you can register. I will tell you, you probably won't get your most ideal schedule your first semester. Most students do not because you're registered a little later than the current students. However, there will still be classes available. Don't worry. The university would not have admitted you unless they had classes for you. So you might have to take one of those 8 a.m. classes. No one likes to wake up, but in your future semesters, you'll be able to register a little bit earlier, hopefully, and you'll be able to get those classes you most want. All right.
So let me tell you a little bit about the Bursar Office and what we do. So as I mentioned, we're the ones that are responsible for the assessment of tuition and fees. So we're the ones that are going to generate electronic billing statements for you and the ones that are responsible for the generation of the tuition bill itself. And also the collection of tuition fees. So I will go over, how you can make payments a little bit later. But so we're the ones that are going to expect you to make payments. And if there's any reason for you to be eligible for a refund, we would be the ones to generate that refund for you. And we do have our contact information there on that slide. So we're on the second floor of the Student Services building. So when you get here, we're the floor down below, my lovely friend here in the International Student Center. Anyway, so the basics are we have our tuition fee rates that are out there on the web. But one of the things that we created this last year, which I think will be a benefit to you, is we get a lot of students, international students specifically, that need to have a pretty good estimate of their tuition and fees. It needs to be on the letterhead and everything. And we have that functionality for you, available for you through Galaxy, when you log into Orion. And so, there's a little bit of information on the slide on how to get to that. But if you actually go to our Bursar Office website, there's a link off of our homepage that gives you specific instructions on how to access that estimate. Like I said, you'll log into Orion and everything, just put in the number of hours that you are interested in enrolling in, the term in which you would be enrolling in, which obviously would be spring 18, and it'll generate for you the tuition estimate as well as other fees that would be applicable towards you. And you would be able to print that out and submit that to possibly, to your bank in order to secure funding from your, home country in order to then have funding to pay for your tuition and fees when you get here to the States. But we will not generate something manually, so that is where you'll have to go to get that estimate. We also have a guaranteed tuition plan, so when you do come here in spring, your tuition fee rates are locked in for 4 consecutive years. So you will access on our webpage the rate that says spring 18, summer 18. And so it'll be that grid that you would access. And so we actually cannot provide you with the exact amount that you owe until actually you have registered for classes. So there are some additional fees that you would have charged to you. As international students, you are required to have health insurance, and so that is going to be charged to you each term. And those rates are listed out on this website here. Obviously, you'll be attending orientation. These lovely folks are going to provide you a lot of good information and everything, and so there's that one-time fee of $50 for the international student orientation. Each term, you will be charged a $100 International Student Services fee. That does go to help fund the International Student Center to help provide services to you all, the international students. And of course, you do have the International Documented Evaluation fee for having been admitted here, but that's a one-time fee as well. One of the things I want to point out is that we will bill tuition after you have registered for your classes. So we can't generate a bill for you until after you have registered for classes and everything. I get the question quite often, well, can I make payment ahead of time? We really prefer that you do not do that because we cannot provide you with the exact amount that you owe prior. You will be able to, again, like I said, access that estimate. So if you want to go ahead and do that and do a wire transfer with that, that is perfectly fine. But we don't encourage students to make payment ahead of time because we want you to be able to see what it is that you actually owe. If you'll notice on the screen, this is an example of our academic calendar, an actual copy of our academic calendar for the spring 2018 term. And you'll notice it says payment and refund. And so I really encourage you to look at the academic calendar every single term because it's going to list the important dates for that particular term. What I'd like to highlight here, as with this being your first term, the spring 18, you all would be eligible for the extended payment deadline, which would be same as our financial aid recipients. And if you'll notice, that date is January 23rd. So that is the date that we would expect you to be able to make full payment and or have set up a payment plan for your tuition fee rates. There is no reason why you shouldn't have already been registered and be able to see that information by that time. So we've talked about a little bit about tuition fees and everything. How can you make payment? I really want to highlight our online payment gateway. We call it Easy Pay, because it really is a pretty easy way to facilitate making payment online. And so what it is a direct interface with our student system. You would log into it with your NetID and password, same as you would to log into Galaxy. And there are two different forms of payment within that particular system. If you're paying, when you get to the United States and everything, if you set up a U.S. bank account, and there is the ability for you to make payment online with what is called electronic checking. So if you deposited funds into your U.S. bank account for the funds in order to pay for your tuition fees, you would be able to make an online payment called electronic check, and it really is like a direct draft from your bank account to UT Dallas. The payment would get posted immediately, but it would take a few days for it to actually clear your bank. There is no fee whatsoever assessed for that particular payment method because it's not costing us anything in order to facilitate that. If you plan to make payment with a credit card, please note that we only accept American Express, Discover Card, and MasterCard. And you would be charged an extra 1.9% fee on top of the amount that you would be paying. We refer to that as a convenience fee. Truth be told, it is a way to recoup some of the fees that were charged back from the merchants. You will notice that I did not list Visa. We do not accept Visa for the payment of any tuition and fees. And it goes back to the convenience fee. So please make arrangements to have one of the other forms of credit card available if that's how you plan to make payment. Within Easy Pay, we also have a payment plan. We refer to it as the installment plan, and it is a way to break up that tuition balance into thirds, and you would be required to make that first payment the day that you're making that you're setting up that installment plan. You'll notice there is a $25 one-time fee to set up that payment plan for that particular term. So there would be a payment due at the moment that you set up that payment plan, and then since we're talking about the spring term, there would be a payment that would be due in February and a payment that would be due in March. Those dates are listed on that academic calendar as well. So that is one payment plan that is available to you. I believe it's on our next slide, hopefully. Let me go ahead and I'm going to shoot down to the other payment plan, and that is, if you look at the bottom, it says short-term loan. And so there's many times that students may have a little bit of a delay in getting their funds from their home country here to the United States, whatever the reason for the delay is. That is a payment plan that I would recommend to students if they do not have the funds to facilitate payment in full or that installment plan ahead of time. That particular payment plan doesn't require any money down initially, except for the payment of the insurance. Insurance is not included in the short-term loan, but that will cover your tuition and fees, and then it gives you an extended deadline that would be the same as the installment plan that's due in March. But it'll cover all your tuition fees. The most important and the key piece of this is it will protect your classes to ensure that you are not dropped for non-payment. Because if you have signed up for the short-term loan, you have signed up for an official payment plan with the university. You have agreed that you accept responsibility for the payment of those tuition and fees, and therefore your classes are therefore then protected. But you'll notice that you would be charged 1.25%, for that particular payment plan. Now, shooting back up the other forms of payment, I get asked all the time, do you accept demand drafts? I know it's very popular in Indiana. Absolutely. And so if you would just have the demand draft made out to UT Dallas, if you wish, you can spell out the University of Texas at Dallas, but UT Dallas, all of that is perfectly fine. And I did mention wire transfers. We do have a lot of students that are asking, about, well, can you accept wire transfers? The answer is absolutely, but please note that it is only through Flywire. Flywire is a third-party entity that we have partnered with, and this is available through Orion underneath the self-service campus finances path. Again, on our website, the Bursar Office website, we have more specific instructions. But you would log into Orion, you would click on the Flywire link, and then it would transfer you to the Flywire website in order to facilitate that international payment, international wire transfer. Please note that we will not provide you with our personal, UT banking information to do any type of wire transfer. It must be done through Flywire. But please also note that UT Dallas is not going to charge you any additional fees ourselves for the acceptance of an international wire.
Yes, Flywire is very popular with our students.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I want to talk a little bit about some financial aid opportunities. I know a lot of students get concerned about paying their entire tuition and fees. We have a financial aid office, and I have their contact information at the very bottom of this slide. Scholarships are one type of financial aid. And so keep in mind, though, the financial aid office does not offer need-based scholarships. So that means it doesn't offer scholarships if the only criteria you have is that you don't have enough money. They do have other scholarships listed on their website, and I've listed both of them. And these are scholarships that might apply to you based on merit or specific criteria, such as you are a transfer student or you have completed certain amounts of volunteer work. You can find these scholarships and take a look at all the requirements and apply if that's something that does apply to you. Many students also ask about teaching and research assistantships. So a teaching assistantship, or TA, is where you would be assisting a professor in a particular class. You might be teaching those classes. You might be doing grading and just consulting with students. A research assistantship is where you'd be working with a specific faculty member, and you might be helping to conduct research, testing, other things such as that. For a TA or an RA position, you'll want to contact your academic department. So those are distributed through academic departments, and that's how you'd be able to apply for one. And again, you can go to your academic department's website. They might have that information, and if they don't have it listed, you can go ahead and you can email them. It's always okay to ask questions because they'd be happy to get back to you. And so if you have additional questions about financial aid, I've listed the different resources. So you can go to the financial aid website. You can also send an email to financial aid to find out more information or just ask questions, and contact your academic department, like I mentioned.
Yes, and Katie mentioned a little bit about financial aid and scholarships. Another question I get a lot is that I've been offered a $1,000 Dean's Excellence Scholarship and stuff like this. How does that get applied? Do I have to pay ahead of time? So I'd like to address those questions. So let's say that you have been offered a $1,000 scholarship from a Dean's Excellence Scholarship or some other university source where you competed for the scholarship. That does qualify you to get the equivalent of the in-state, or should I say, resident tuition rate. And so that credit will go directly onto your student financial account. No one is going to give you the $1,000 directly. It's going to be posted again onto your student financial account. And then you'll also get a credit on your account that would say competitive scholarship. That competitive scholarship credit is going to credit you for the difference between the resident and non-resident rate. And like I said, in essence, it then brings your tuition rate down to what would be the equivalent of the resident rate. It would be my preference that, a lot of students want to say, well, do I pay ahead of time even though I'm getting the scholarship? And the answer is I would prefer that you don't do that. Why should you be out that money and give it to the university, and then when those credits get applied to your student account, that we just turn around and refund you. That's another reason that we do give students an extended payment deadline. So if you happen to be a student, you know, in future terms as well, that you're going to be getting some sort of scholarship, as described here on this slide, or an RATA scholarship, you automatically do have an extended payment deadline as identified underneath the financial aid recipient extended deadline. And again, that deadline is January 23rd. And so, again, you'll be charged as a non-resident student because that is in actuality what you are. But you'll see the credits get posted. That will then, like I said, bring your rate down, and you should see that $1,000 or whatever the amount of that scholarship, you know, posted as well. And then you can go ahead and facilitate making payment for the balance, you know, after those credits have been posted. Of course, if it gets delayed down to the last wire, obviously we would expect you to go ahead and make full payment, and then we would just refund you. So again, these helpful tips are just things from questions that I have been asked over the years and everything. And so I do have students that will bring this big old wad of cash, you know, up to our front windows to facilitate making payment. You know, you're talking, $17,000. And ladies and gentlemen, please, please, please do not put yourself through that type of risk. I beg of you. It is not important for you to bring cash, and I realize that cash may be very important to you in your home country and everything to make payment, you know, but it is not our preference here because, again, that is huge risk, and I would hate for something to happen to you, you know, where that is lost or somebody has stolen it from you or something of this nature. And so and my understanding is you go to the bank and you specifically are grabbing all this cash when technically speaking, you know, what we use is, remember earlier I mentioned the electronic check or just writing a check, okay? That is better, you know, because you could have your check stolen, you know, but you could have that stop paid and it costs you $25 and boom, that's the extent of your loss. Whereas obviously if somebody steals your cash, nobody's going to get that back from you, you know, for you rather.
And I just wanted to mention, in addition to it's not safe to carry that much cash on you, like Cheryl mentioned, a lot of other places in the U.S. don't accept cash payments for services. So when you're renting your apartment and you're trying to pay your deposit, they probably don't accept cash. Same with for your utilities, such as electricity and Wi-Fi, phone service. And so it's a good idea to have some type of other option for you to be able to pay those for those services.
Yeah, so no cash. Also, I've already mentioned this, but you know, I know that a lot of students also get Visa branded travel cards. Please do not make a point of getting any type of Visa branded travel card because again, that is not accepted for the payment of tuition fees. We do not accept Visa branded cards for the payment of any tuition fees.
I will mention most other places do accept Visa. You might want to ask for, like, at an apartment or an electricity company if they do, but you can use them for those options. But like Cheryl mentioned, do not expect to pay for your tuition and fees with that Visa card.
That is correct. And I did say that demand drafts are accepted. Please make it out to UT Dallas. If your demand draft happens to be made up for a little bit more than your actual tuition because you had planned for some living expenses, some small living expenses, we do put a hold on the refund for 30 days to ensure that that demand draft clears, but we would certainly refund you after those 30 days.
Cheryl, quick question. How is the money refunded to students?
Well, it is our preference that a student will go ahead and set themselves up with a U.S. bank account when they arrive. Because at the end of the day, there's going to be importance for you to have a relationship with the bank, but ultimately, establishing credits and everything. If you're going to be here for a couple of years, that would be important. When we create a refund for you, if you have set up a U.S. bank account and you have set up what we call direct deposit, meaning linking your bank account within EasyPay, defining where you would like your refund to go, we create that refund for you. Say today it's Thursday, and that money more than likely will be in your bank account tomorrow, Friday. Yeah, it's that quick because it's an electronic transfer from UT Dallas to your bank that you have identified, within EasyPay. Otherwise, we would mail out a check. And one of the things that we find is that international students do not always, even though it's highly recommended, update their address information within Orion to their new U.S. address. They still have an address for China or India, which we're not going to mail a check to China or India, and let's face it, that's not where you want the money to go anyway, right? You're not there. So I would highly recommend that you go ahead and establish a U.S. bank account pretty shortly after you arrive in the U.S.
Something else about the direct deposit that Cheryl mentioned that I see a lot is if you get a job on campus, your paycheck will be direct deposited into an account, and that's a requirement. And so having that U.S. bank account existing is helpful because you get your paycheck really quickly once it's deposited or given to you in your account.
And don't we all want our money as quickly as we can get it? And no lost checks. No lost checks in the mail.
Exactly.
And another thing I wanted to point out is, again, with Flywire, what happens is when you go into Flywire to initiate that payment, ultimately you have to fund that payment. Please be sure that you allow enough time to not just initiate the payment and fund the payment, but also that that payment reaches and gets posted to your UT Dallas student financial account. I personally recommend allowing your at least 1 week, for your funding to be funded and then post to your student financial account. If you do it the day before the payment deadline, I assure you, it will not be on your UT Dallas account. It will not be posted to your student financial account because we have not received those funds yet. And you would be considered late. So please allow enough time, for that payment to get posted. Because I would hate for you to be charged any late fees, which, by the way, a late payment will cost you $100 US. So it is a significant late fee that I really would not like to charge you based on that you can avoid that simply by initiating that payment a week in advance.
Yes. Also, when you're planning your trip to the United States and the amount of money you're going to be spending, I wanted to mention a few additional expenses that some people just don't take into account. So, of course, your housing. So on-campus housing is one particular price. You can find that information on the housing webpage, and then off-campus housing. So we do have some information about living off-campus on our International Center website. Oftentimes, if you do not have a U.S. Social Security number, you will have to pay a higher deposit. So the deposit is just securing your apartment before you move in. Typically, a deposit is twice the first month's rent, but it might be higher for you if you don't have a Social Security number. Also think about transportation. So if you're going to get a car, you need to pay for gas, you need to pay for insurance, you need to pay for a campus parking pass. The nice thing about UT Dallas is we do have a bus system, the Comet Cruiser 883, which is completely free for anyone, students, families, and you don't need to show an ID to ride it. And then that can connect you to DART, which is the Dallas Area Rapid Transit. I think I got that right. And all students get a free DART pass as long as they sign up. But additionally, the DART pass is not too expensive if you just want to use it for a day. And that can connect you to downtown Dallas. You can transfer and get to Fort Worth. So many areas. So you can go sightseeing and go buy groceries, all sorts of things. And then, of course, think about your essential items for classes and living. So textbooks, those typically cost a little bit, and so you can look at prices online. You can also look at prices probably in the bookstore. Think about your food, toiletries, other housing items like towels and pillows that you'll need to purchase. And then, of course, your utilities for your apartment. So electricity, internet, and phone service if you want to get a cell phone. These are things that not everybody takes into consideration, and it does cost money. U.S. banking. So Cheryl mentioned about setting up a U.S. bank account. I'd like to give this information to students. Some of the more popular banks in the United States are Chase Bank, Bank of America, Citibank, Wells Fargo, and then U.S. Bank, which their company's name is U.S. Bancorp. Wells Fargo does have an ATM available on campus, but it's not affiliated with the University of Texas at Dallas. So all of their websites are listed on the slide. Sometimes you can find a bank that is in network, or they might have an agreement with a bank in your home country. So that might be something good to look at. That way you can easily transfer your money. You also need to check the bank's requirements for opening an account without a Social Security number. And so sometimes they'll have different requirements, different paperwork that you might have to sign, and some banks might not allow you to open a bank account. Something I always recommend is to talk to current students at UT Dallas. Many of you can contact your cultural student organization, and those students can give you recommendations on the banks that they have found helpful, and even things like apartments and other places to shop for all those items that you need. All right, well, I'm going to turn on the chat function, and we will give you some time to ask us questions. Press the chat function. Here we go. Yes, we have chat function on. So if you want to type them in the box on the left, we will happily answer any questions that you have. Hopefully we've given you a general overview of things, but sometimes you'll have a more specific question. So we'll wait a moment for you to type those questions. Oh, there you go. Oh, okay. We have a couple questions. Let me scroll up to the top one. All right. So someone says, my understanding is that we cannot pay till we know what courses we are taking, and we cannot know what courses we are taking till we have met with our advisors. And some of that is correct. When you meet with your academic advisor, they will give you information about the classes that are required. If you do look at the academic department's website, you can typically find the general information for your major and your degree plan. So a degree plan shows you what you're expected to complete before graduation. And this can give you a good idea of those classes that you're expected to take. There's typically required classes, and so you have to take those classes. And then there's also elective classes. So you need to fulfill a certain amount of elective classes as well. And electives are classes that you can choose based on your interest or what your career plan is, and it's usually within certain parameters. You might have to take within a certain school here on campus, or you might have to take a certain level of those elective classes. And so that's a good idea. You can take a look at those before you talk to your advisor. And then that way you can ask questions about specifics when you actually meet with your advisor. And yes, like Cheryl mentioned, until you register for classes, you cannot pay for your classes. However, you can take a look and click back so you can see, let's see, where are we? About,
yes. Yeah, and just as a reminder, I really would encourage you to go ahead and try that tuition estimate page, because it will give you a fairly accurate estimate. If it's off, I would say maybe $100, possibly two, but I think that would be out of the realm of reasonableness. It'll give you a good estimate. And again, we're talking about strictly the charges that would go on your student financial accounts, which would be tuition, insurance, international student service fee, and orientation. We would not have any housing charges on there, and you would not be required to have a meal plan. So, but those would be the charges that you would see on the estimate.
Another question we have is, I needed to ask that we can register for additional classes and then drop classes later. And so how is the tuition calculated after that?
That's a very good question. And so when you register for classes and everything, you're going to be charged the tuition and fees for the amount of the hours that you're enrolled in. I mentioned the academic calendar before, but I didn't mention anything about the refund part of that calendar. And so I encourage you to take a look at that academic calendar, because if you are planning to drop some courses, it is very important that you understand that there's a distinction between dropping the class and withdrawing the class and the timing of when that happens. So referring to the academic calendar for the spring 2018 term, you would have until and through January 24th for the 16-week session classes to drop a class while remaining enrolled in other classes to receive a full refund for those classes. Now, you might not wait that long to drop. You may just be within a few days or something like this. But we would absolutely credit you 100% of the charges affiliated with the classes that you drop, as long as you do that drop no later than January 24th for the full term session, the 16-week session, while remaining enrolled in at least 3 hours. But as international students, pretty sure you've got to be enrolled in more than 3 hours.
Yes, as an international student, you're required to be enrolled in the full-time courses. So for an undergraduate student, that's 12 hours, and for a graduate student, that's 9 hours. Keep in mind this is for F1 students. So if you're in a different visa, you can ask the international student advisors, what is your course requirement? I also want to mention that if you do choose to drop a class, we highly recommend that you meet with an international student advisor prior to dropping that class to make sure you're still maintaining all the requirements for your visa.
I want to add one more thing, and that is if you're dropping the class, there's a lot of times students will expect your account to be immediately updated. It could be an overnight update. So if you want it updated immediately, you can certainly come by the Bursar office, but your account, well, it normally takes an overnight update, but we can always click a button and refresh the screen immediately, but you wouldn't see it change yourself immediately.
Mm-hmm. It takes us several business days to get all that paperwork completed. Someone's asking if they're getting a recording of this session, and yes. It takes us 1 to 2 weeks to be able to download and post our recording. However, that will be posted on our YouTube page and our YouTube page, and you can access those through the same website where you went to join this webinar. All right. Someone is asking how to access the pre-arrival module, which in their case is a professional development course, and are they required to finish these before the United States, or entering the United States? And so, yes, if you are an F1 or J1 student, you are required to complete the pre-arrival module. This is part of your International Student Orientation hold, which is 2 parts, so attending orientation and completing those pre-arrival modules. It's most helpful when you complete these before your arrival to the United States, because it gives you a good overview of what you need to enter the U.S., what are some travel tips, also some general university information, so you'll know and be prepared when you're starting to take those classes. To access them, you'll go to e-learning, and so e-learning is a website where many of your academic information will be. Lots of professors create their own e-learning page and post assignments, allow you to ask questions. So e-learning can be accessed through the university's main page. You'll see a link for it, and all you have to do is log in with your net ID and password, and you'll see that you are part of an organization, pre-arrival modules, FY 17 and 18. And so this is where you can access those modules. All you have to do is click on it, and you'll be able to watch those. If you have not accepted your admission to the university, you will not have access. So first you need to accept your admission to the university, and then give us about 1 week until we can actually add you to our system, because similar to Cheryl's, it takes us a little while to download all those acceptances and get all your emails and access. Okay. A student says, about the tuition rate, I am a U.S. citizen, but I'm not a Texas resident. Will I get the in-state tuition rate in my second year? Okay, now that is more of a residency question that is underneath the registrar's office, but generally speaking, if you meet the requirements and are a Texas resident for 1 year, then you would qualify for the Texas resident rate. But yes, as a U.S. citizen but not a Texas resident, you would be charged the non-resident rate.
But you would go ahead, and if you've been accepted at UT Dallas as a non-resident of Texas, you would then subsequently need to apply for the resident tuition. And there is a residency questionnaire that is on the Registrar's Office website that you would need to fill out and submit to the Registrar's Office. And then there is a very specific timing of when you need to fill that out and apply for that to where you would be eligible. So if we're talking for the spring 18 term, you're getting admitted as a non-resident, you would want to make sure that you submit that questionnaire prior to the spring 2019 term so that you could then be considered a resident for that spring 2019 term. If you submitted a month after classes have begun, they're not going to accept it and consider you during that term. It has to be done prior. But that information is on the Registrar's Office website. I highly encourage you to review that.
And you can see at the top of the slide here, I have the Registrar's Office website. So it's just utdallas.edu/registrar, and you can find the contact information for that office, and you can find that form that Cheryl mentioned to see, do you qualify for Texas residency, and what do you need to do to get that. So we have a student saying, I will be attending the International Student Orientation on December 13. Is there a provision to stay on campus until my move-in date in my apartment in January? And yes, so myself and my office was able to talk to the University Housing Department, and we do have some temporary spaces available. Keep in mind, there's a limited amount. However, you can contact the housing office, and they will have an application that you can complete telling them your arrival date and what date you're choosing to leave. And there's a small fee per night of when you will be able, how long it'll, there's a small fee per night of staying on campus. And so it's much cheaper than a hotel, which is helpful. But that's something that you can consider. You will be able to move into that temporary space up to 30 days before the start of classes, which is the time that all international students can arrive in the country. And so yes, you can stay through a specific date in January, and housing has that date available for you. We also have some resources on the university or the International Center's housing website. And let me check because I have that here. So, oh, that's not it. So, I think it might be, oh, here we go, additional expenses. So utdallas.edu/ICP/housing, there's some resources listed about finding temporary spaces until you can move into your apartment. So if for some reason you can't stay on campus, or if maybe there's not a space for you, you can contact the cultural student organizations listed. Many times, some of the students offer to let you stay in their apartment for a few nights. There's also some other community partners who try to make spaces available for students. There's also hotel and residence hotels listed that will give you some long-term stay options. Sometimes those will be a little bit pricey, but if you need a place to stay, they're available for you. We still have about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to answer some questions, so you can go ahead and keep typing those. A student is asking, will the cannot register online hold be removed after attending the general advising session for JSOM? And how much time does it take for the hold to be removed? That's a great question. So I mentioned if you have a department orientation, such as the one for JSOM, yes, that will satisfy the cannot register online hold because you'll be able to meet with the advisor and you'll be getting a presentation to find out all the different requirements for JSOM. JSOM is the one that decides when that hold is removed, and so I would give it probably 2 business days, but you're more than welcome to contact JSOM to see will it take longer. And when can we meet with the academic advisor, and can we meet just after the orientation in December? And so again, this depends on your major. So if you have that department orientation, you'll need to wait until that time, but you're always welcome to schedule an appointment with your academic advisor if they're available. So on the website that I had given you, let's see, I have to find that information. Okay, if you go to utdallas.edu/academics, you'll be able to access your academic department's webpage, and you can find out the different advisors. And if there's no advisor info, that's okay. Send an email to their general address or one of the staff members, and they can point you in the right direction. So that way you can find out when they have advising hours, when can you set up an appointment, and what you'll need to do. You're a very polite group today. They're thanking us for answering all of our questions. I appreciate that.
Yes, yes, very nice.
Like I said, we've got 10 more minutes, so if you want to keep asking questions, you're welcome to. We'll wait a little bit longer. A student's asking, they're attending the January 4 orientation, so the International Student Orientation. How soon will the cannot register online hold be removed? So like I mentioned with the student asking about JSON, it depends on your department. And so you'll either need to attend your department orientation, or you'll need to set up a meeting with your academic advisor. And then you can ask them, how long does it take that hold to be removed? I usually recommend it'll take about 2 business days, but some departments might take a little bit longer because they're meeting with many students. Some departments might take it off that moment. And so it truly depends on the advisor and the department. So a student is saying, I am on an F2 visa. Who do they contact to discuss requirements for my first semester? So you can contact the International Student Services Office. And so if you email issperspectives@utdallas.edu, you've probably gotten some emails from us. They'll be able to give you some guidance on what your visa requirements are. We also have some information on the International Center webpage for the International Student Services Office. So you can find some general information, but the advisors will know some more specifics and be able to tell you about what your visa requirements are. The student is asking, will you assist us getting a U.S. bank account on the day of arrival or on January 4? Unfortunately, we cannot assist you with getting a U.S. bank account. This is something that is your responsibility and you will need to take care of yourself. We did list a few common banks. Something that is also helpful is to contact your cultural student organization, or if you know current students at UT Dallas, they can give you some suggestions on what you need to do to set up that bank account, but the university isn't able to do that for you.
Yeah, I have to agree with Katie on that. If you contact the different associations, student associations here, they are so willing to provide you with information, to provide you with assistance and everything. They're really out there to help their fellow international students, and so I would encourage you to reach out to them for that information.
Here on the page under off-campus housing, you'll see that we have an International Center housing site. And like I mentioned, this gives you some apartment options or some contact information. We also list some of the cultural student organizations that we have seen be extremely helpful to students in the past. So the Indian Student Association or the African Student Union, many of these cultural organizations want to help their incoming students, so they can show you different services and different resources. We have another student asking, are there bank representatives available on campus? And unfortunately, no. One of the reasons is that we cannot sponsor or we cannot promote a specific bank because we're affiliated with UT Dallas only. Like I mentioned, talk to some of those current students to find out what is the best bank and what services they've seen that have been helpful. We will be having a resource fair for international students or all incoming students in January, where we'll have some different companies and some different resources and services on campus and off campus. I can't say for certain if we'll have bank representatives. We try to. It depends on if people are able to attend. So you can always take a look at that and see who can assist you with different items. Can we carry money in Forex cards? I don't know much about Forex.
I'm afraid I'm not familiar with Forex cards either.
No, I'm not familiar with Forex cards. This might be another question to ask to current students to see how did they bring money to the United States, how much money did they bring, and in what form. So Cheryl mentioned there's those Visa branded travel cards that some students use. Obviously you can't pay for your tuition and fees with it. We don't recommend carrying a lot of cash, but you might want to chat with some of those current students to see how much cash did they bring, or if they did use the Forex card and was that helpful for them.
I have to write that down. I want to get some more information on that myself.
I do too. I want to research Forex cards. All right, looks like we have time for maybe one or two more questions. So go ahead and ask those, and then we are going to move on to our closing. Registration for classes opens on the 9th of November. Is that correct? We're going to review the academic calendar because that will tell us. We are not in charge of this.
They've already been registering.
Yeah. So it looks like current students were able to register starting in October. And then there is a last day to add or drop classes, which is in January. You will not be able to register for classes until all your holds are removed from your account. It looks like we have another staff member who is attending our session, and she mentions that it's on November 6th. And so if you do not have holds on your account, then you can start registering for your classes on that date. So we have another student asking, how much is it to pay mandatory insurance? This is a great question. So all all international students, so F1 or J1 students specifically, need to have health insurance. And so you'll be automatically assessed the student health insurance once you register for classes. And we recommend that you actually keep that even when you're not registered for classes. So also enroll in it for summer if you're not taking classes, because then if something happens, you get sick or injured, you don't have to pay that full cost. Health insurance, you can find all the rates on the Student Health Insurance website. You can connect to that through the Student Health Center. It's typically about, I would say about $900, give or take a few dollars for each long semester, and then it's a little bit less, maybe about $600 in the summer.
And as far as how to make payment, then I would encourage you to pay online through EasyPay that I mentioned earlier on, our online payment gateway that is a direct interface with our student system. Again, if you have set up a U.S. bank account and therefore have a checking account, what they call a checking account, then you can make that payment online without any fee. Again, if you're going to pay with a credit card, you must pay online through EasyPay, and you would be charged an extra 1.9%. Since the insurance charge is going to be part of your actual tuition and fee bill, if you are doing a Flywire payment, the international wire payment, then just make sure that you've included that amount in with your Flywire payment. But those would be the 4 ways to make payment for insurance.
Yes. So, a few questions. A student is asking, are you allowed to submit documents in person when we arrive in Dallas, or is it advisable to send through the mail? This question is actually great for the university's admissions and enrollment office. They're in charge of processing all your admissions documents, such as transcripts, bachelor certificates, degrees, other things like that. I do know they typically require an official document, and so they can't take a copy of that. So yes, you can bring those documents in person when you come to orientation. I always have a representative from the admissions office at our international student orientations, and so they can collect those documents from you. I do believe you can send them in the mail. I will warn you is that the university is closed for winter break between, I believe it is the 22nd of December, I'm sorry. Yes, the 22nd of December through January 3rd. And so no mail will be distributed between different offices at that time. The admissions office will not be able to process any documents. And so we typically recommend that you bring those documents with you to orientation or to the campus, because you could submit it directly to the office. And that way it'll be a quicker processing time for those holds for you. All right, take maybe last question. If I apply for a waiver for the medical insurance, how much time will it take for the decision to be accepted, and how will it be reflected in my tuition? So this is a good question too. I didn't mention this. Yes, if you have another insurance that is equal to or more coverage than the student health insurance plan, you can apply for a waiver. So you might have health insurance via your spouse or a parent, or you might just have health insurance through something else. You can apply for a waiver on the Student Health Insurance website. Truthfully, I don't know how long it takes. So I would leave maybe a week or two, at least, to get those documents processed, because they have to send those to the off-campus service that will process that document. They're the ones who coordinate our student health insurance and then return that information to the university. If you have questions, the Student Health Insurance Coordinator is completely in charge of health insurance, and she can answer all questions related to that. You can find her contact information on the Student Health Insurance website.
And I'd like to add a little bit to that to finish up that question, and that is there is a very specific deadline on when to apply for that insurance waiver that is listed on the Student Health Center website. It's usually just a few days after classes have begun. So please go out to their website and make sure that you apply for that waiver before that deadline passes, because they will not accept the request after that deadline. And as far as if you have been accepted, meaning your waiver has been accepted, then what will happen is you will still have the insurance charge on your student account, but then what you will see is a credit in kind, to offset the charge for that student insurance. And it'll say student insurance waiver. and again, it'll offset the student insurance charge.
All right, I'm going to answer this last question, and then we'll move on. If you have additional questions, I've put up our information, and so you're welcome to email both of us. Somebody wants to know how to register for the TB test. So all students born outside of the United States are required to take the tuberculosis test. And so this is a university requirement. You can register through the Student Health Center's website. So they have specific days around International Student Orientation in order to help accommodate students getting those tests. And so you'll be able to find that information, and you can send them an email in order to register. You also are allowed to take the TB test off campus. Keep in mind it does take a few extra days for processing because that has to be, they have to be sent to the lab and then be sent to our campus. And you can find requirements for the type of test you need to take on the Student Health Center's website. Okay, well, I'm going to move along. Again, like I mentioned, we'd like to know any feedback about the webinar. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat function. We do want to improve the services to students. Like I mentioned before, there'll be a full recording of this webinar posted on our website. So I have it listed there. Please allow us about a week or two because it does take a while for our Blackboard system to download that. We also will have the PDF version of these slides posted on that same website. So that'll take a little bit less time. I just have to send it to my tech team. So our next webinar is going to be all about UTD. So I'll be presenting that along with another staff member to talk about the different services, the different things that University of Texas at Dallas offers. And so this was a really great webinar to attend just to learn a little bit more about all the benefits of attending UT Dallas. And that's going to be in 2 weeks, so Thursday, November 16 at 8 a.m. again. All right, well, thank you for attending our webinar.
Yes, this has been fun.
Yes, and we hope we were able to answer your questions. And like I mentioned, you are welcome to contact us at these 2 email addresses, and we'll be able to answer other questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much.